So we're going to talk about what happens when you think you've been compromised, when you think you've been breached, when you think there is a cyber incident, and from that moment on, how does things unfold? And we're not necessarily going to talk about the technical part, but like things like, okay, so who do you call? Like you'll see, like there's so many things to uncover here that if you haven't been in an incident, which I hope you haven't, then usually you're not aware of those things. So we've got a great panel, and I'll let them introduce themselves. They'll do a better job than me. I'll start from left to right on my end. So, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself, then Robert, and then Richard. Rich.
Thank you, Gabby. It's very nice to be here. I'm Joe Taraf. I lead services at Surefire Cyber, and who we are is we are an incident response firm. So day in and day out, we're dealing with various cyber events like ransomware, business email compromises, network intrusions, etc. Our job is usually contain the threat, eradicate the threat, figure out what happened, and restore services, whether that be through helping organizations rebuild systems and data or negotiating with some bad guys to get a decryptor.
Thank you.
Thank
Robert.
you.
Yeah, my name is Robert Walker. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Lewis Brisbois Data Privacy and Cybersecurity team. So part of a nationwide team that handles incidents like ransomware, email compromise, and network intrusion on a daily basis. Work actually very closely with Surefire as well as the Tokyo Marine team, with Rich will introduce himself. But our role is to serve as the privacy counsel for our clients to help guide them through incidents, help with any messaging needs they may have. And then ultimately, if there is a compromise of any sensitive data, to help you meet your legal obligations in that regard. So really that's our role, is just to provide support throughout the life of an incident.
Thanks,
Cool.
Robert, and thanks, Gabby. Hey, everyone. My name is Rich Savage. I lead the cyber incident management team at Tokyo Marine HCC Cyber and Professional Alliance Group. My team essentially, while we live under the claims umbrella, we're really in place to help our insureds navigate their way through an active cyber incident. We have the opportunity to answer our 24/7 hotline, for better or for worse there. But really the purpose of my team is to assist folks in real time in figuring out the best path of response. In some cases, that means getting vendors involved, like Joe or Robert here, and essentially being an active part of their incident and seeing it through. We provide situational guidance based on our technical knowledge and experience, and yeah, interact with these things on quite literally a daily basis.
Cool. So let's start with the beginning. It sounds like how do I know that I've been attacked, breached? Like sometimes it's very clear. There is a ransomware node, everybody knows about it. But I'm sure there's a lot of other cases where somebody emails you and says, I have your data, right? Or somebody on social media says, or somebody opens a ticket, or like stuff like that. So how do I know if this is real? And who do I call? What is the first thing that I do when something like that happen? And it can be, like it can be like somebody from support that's, escalates the ticket, stuff like that. So, Rich, why don't you start with that? Because usually you're the main point of contact when something like that happens. If they call you, if they have your phone number.
Right. If they call us, if they have our number, and of course, if they have insurance. So if an
Yeah,
entity has cyber insurance, or any kind of insurance, it's a
yeah.
good start to call, figure out who you've got to call from an insurance perspective, and reach out. We get this question a lot. When does an event kind of rise to the level of being reportable, or when does something rise to the level of being a claim? And that question is not an easy one to answer. It's different for entities across the board. We primarily, I think, we insure a lot of companies in what is considered the small to medium sized business
Hmm.
space. And there's different levels of IT sophistication. Their IT infrastructure may be entirely outsourced. So what becomes sort of an internal support issue for one organization is something that they might want to try to report for another.
Yeah.
It's all about if you see something, say something, and if there's anomalous or weird activity happening in the environment, something that goes beyond, I just got a phishing email. I got a
Yeah.
phishing email and clicked on it, interacted with it, and maybe gave up my password. That's the time when maybe we call. And when we have that initial call, I don't want to take too much time here, but if we receive that initial call, we have an opportunity to ask the insured a little bit about what's going on, maybe get some technical details about the event, and leverage our experience to make additional recommendations, maybe introduce that client or insured to Joe or Robert even for some additional discussion. And then we can get into a little bit more about how that works.
So why call you? Like, why don't I just go to our IT person and they try to solve it? Like you said, somebody gave their password. Let's just try to solve it. Let's just to try to like figure out what happened. Why call my cyber insurance? Like, what's the point?
Excellent question. And the bigger point of that is if someone has insurance and they intend to submit a claim or intend to have expenses reimbursed by some kind of insurance policy, most insurance policies require some level of approval for the incursion of expenses. So if you think you're going to be incurring any kind of expenses, it's really great to have approval from the insurance company before you do so. I don't mean to just focus on that piece because I think Joe might have a different opinion on why we wouldn't want someone to potentially remediate an anomalous event on their own, because it could potentially get worse. But Joe, I'll kick it to you for that.
No, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the answer, there's some nuance there, Gabby, right? If the organization has a really competent IT team and they've done a review and they really feel like it's one user and they got a good handle on it and they did their due diligence and they know what they're doing, I could see a company elect not to raise it. But for most companies, that's not the case. For most companies, the IT teams are kind of like your generalist doctors or your MSP. They're generalists. They're very good at managing day-to-day infrastructure and operations. But when it comes to a cyber event, it's kind of like you're having a cardiac event. You don't want your GP handling it. You want your cardio to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's better to do that. So there is some nuance, but generally I agree with Rich on the balance of probabilities. It's as when you see something that goes beyond the norm of your day to day, call somebody. The scoping call that Rich is talking about, it's kind of like the triage that we do. It's free, it doesn't cost anything. And it'll give us a sense of, is this a real thing or not? And generally, all three of us, when we were on these calls, we've had instances where we go, you know what, this isn't something serious. Do these two steps and you're good. Or we need to look into this a little bit deeper. Let's scope it out more.
Yeah, and to
Yeah, in
that
the
point,
interest of risk
that doesn't
management. Oh,
mean
sorry.
oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to back Joe up on that. Just because we have that initial call doesn't necessarily mean a claim will move forward. So as Joe says, if we realize this is a minor incident, you've got it contained, there's really nothing to go forward here, then we let you know that, and we don't even open up a file at that point.
That's
At the same
important
time,
because it means that we're not going to be charged, right? As a customer, like I call you guys, I get some advice, and I know because so it's just better to call you anyways and get sort of free consultation and whether and understand from you guys if this is worth opening a claim or not. Because if it open a claim, yes, there's some, it has some impacts. But one more thing that in so when we were prepping to this, I continuously said, if you have a breach, if you have a breach, if you have a breach. And Robert, I think you said like, hey, hey, your lawyer hat sort of like was no, 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 no. Why not call it a breach if it's a breach? So I'll
Right.
give you the scenario. Hold on. So um I go online, I get a ticket. Okay. Hey, I think you guys got breached. Okay. Then I go to Reddit or social media and I start to see like pop-ups coming up where people mention this company was breached or I got this email or some threatening messages. And I said, you know, should the customer success or support maybe respond back, hey, we are looking, maybe this is a breach or we have an incident, like, and you were like, hey, 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 stop here. So talk to me about it because this is really important.
Yeah, it is. The words that you use have meaning. So when you bring up the word breach or the word ransomware, there are these trigger words that have certain connotations to them. Breach, for example, in legal terminology, that's when you have found information that has been accessed or acquired by an unauthorized party that requires notice to individuals. So these letters that probably everybody on this call has received saying, so and so company was impacted, these data elements were impacted, and they might even provide credit monitoring. So at the very early stages of a cyber incident, we don't really know. We don't have a full grasp of what's happened. There may have been some samples provided by the bad actor that they may have stolen some data, but we haven't verified that. And so in the very early stages, the very first days, and usually even weeks of an incident, we like to keep the messaging very high level. We like to keep it intentionally vague so that we can build upon it as an incident develops. And we try to avoid using the term breach. We try to avoid using the term ransomware attack, things like that that will heighten the level of anxiety, heighten the kind of PR that surrounds it. We want to keep it as low level as we possibly can. Some incidents, it's out of our control. Some incidents just kind of spiral. But for the most part, if you have a clear, concise, and somewhat vague messaging to start, that seems to be the best approach.
We find a lot of entities want to be transparent in these situations, and if there's been a quote unquote breach, we definitely don't want them saying the B word. The B word is off the table until maybe that letter goes out that Robert mentioned. But the transparency, it really is more important to say as little as possible, and so that you can really control the messaging and ensure that things don't get out of control. The more you tell folks, I think the more questions you're going to get in that situation when you may not always have enough answers to give everyone. So
Yeah,
It can
and
also
people in
use
that
against you,
transparency vein, people want to tell all these things and say they may even want to come out and say definitively our employees' data has not been impacted or our customer data has not been impacted. We recommend against that as well. Until we know more, until the investigation is more fully developed, you never want to say something that you either have to take back, you have to change. So you want to be consistent and you want to develop that layer of trust with the people, who are receiving it so they understand that you have a grasp of this incident, but it's building. It's everybody should understand in the first few days of an incident, you don't have the answers. And so you're not going to give them. We're not going to give any answers because we don't have them.
So what do you tell? So you get a lot of support tickets. Service is down. We got threatening emails that we have your data, stuff like that. So now you've got the support team and the customer success team and maybe the social media team, seeing all of that blowing up. Okay, so what do you tell them? Like, we're investigating this? Like the service is down. Like, how do you control the message? What do you think is because, okay, two things. A, they probably didn't talk to you before this event. So,
yeah, we sometimes have to walk those back, right, Robert? When we have an opportunity to get involved in these things and events are unfolding, and companies might want to be transparent or might want to start with some kind of messaging either to employees or to customers or to clients. At the very least, in some of those initial fact-finding calls, those initial discussions, we'll make recommendations that Robert essentially can help with initial crisis communications, initial messaging, holding statements. Sorry, Robert, you can certainly comment on that.
Yeah, and that's why you want to bring in people who do this on a daily basis. We understand how you should message these things. As Rich said, a lot of times people want to be super transparent. They want to make everybody happy, and you just can't do that. You don't have the answers. Sometimes you may come out and say, we think this is a breach, and then we find out later the bad guys, well, they may have gotten in and encrypted some data. They didn't actually steal anything. They didn't actually pull any data out that would require notice. And so then you have to take that back. And then you're dealing with answers, excuse me, dealing with questions from customers, questions from employees, when you really should be focusing your efforts on the recovery, on the containment, and those critical aspects in that first 24 to 48 hours that will lead to a good recovery. So you don't want to distract your organization. You want to keep the messaging clear, concise, and vague. And then you want to let the experts like Joe deal with the containment issues.
yeah.
We may be
And
dealing
what
with a data
happens online
security event.
stays online, right? So like those things can potentially be used against you later. And I've seen companies where it's not the actual cyber incidents that took them down, is the amount of this disturbance to the business, the amount of money they had to pay to because they just make things worse with how they
Yeah.
communicated, and it just cost them so much money. And I just can't imagine how would they like can handle that if they don't have insurance.
And I agree with all of that said here. And what I've seen sometimes, or what I've heard from certain organizations is, well, we had to do something because calling, we didn't want to go through the process of calling insurance and getting because it takes time. But that's a fallacy in my mind, especially like working with Rich's team, for example. Like yesterday, we were on a call where the victim said, wow, this is so fast. I actually called insurance 30 minutes ago and we're all here talking about this. So it's not a process that takes hours and days. Like it really is a very streamlined process. And most insurance companies and IR teams right today, we've been doing this for years. We've kind of like streamlined the process to be very quick on the response. So it doesn't take much for you to get the help that you need very early on. And I cannot stress enough that that's what you should do.
Yeah.
That's going to save you a lot of headaches down the line, potentially.
And a lot of the carriers provide some pre-breach services. So like, because the things we talk about now are you guys educating the company while the fire is happening, which, learning, like you're not mentally ready to learn while everything is collapsing. This is not a good environment to learn. So I really urge any company to know even simple things like what's the phone number of the cyber insurance company that you like simple things. And I'm not even that, like, as we work together on the Wizer part, training employees in case of an incident, like what not to do. Let's start with that. Like what not to say, what not to do, who should handle this, because you want people trained on this stuff versus communicating all of that while there is a chaos. At least prepare them in advance. It costs you nothing, right? It costs you almost nothing. You're getting those templates. You can educate your team before that. You should probably do that part of your annual training. What happens if and those things are available. I think just people don't know about it. Rich, do you
Yeah,
want maybe a little bit to add about those type of things that you guys offer?
yeah, most cyber insurance companies offer some level of in-house risk management, whether it's a portal or a website or some kind of utility, but an opportunity for individuals who have that insurance to sign up for, in some cases, cybersecurity training, phishing simulations training, or access documents like sample incident response plans or ransomware run books, get information on current threats and things like that. So we don't often, though, see a lot of entities really taking full advantage of those free services. So we want to continue to encourage people to do so because it's all about risk management. A lot of what we do, I think, is about risk management. The sooner we get a call in real time, the less severe an incident may be. So it's really important to understand what those things are, and of course, how to contact your insurance company. And I will note, though, if anyone on this call that's listening has cyber insurance and has a cyber insurance policy, this is just completely out of the blue here. Sorry. Don't store your cyber insurance policy on your network. In the event that a bad actor gains access to the environment,
Yeah.
they get access to the policy. It can potentially derail the response to an active incident or derail a ransom negotiation.
And
And
also you won't be
that
able
is
to.
real world examples where we sometimes get lists from the bad actors. They show us, their hand and say, here's the data we stole. And you'll see on there the cyber insurance policy folder that has the actual policy in it. So they know exactly what your limits are, and their demands are according to that.
So yeah, that makes it really hard to negotiate when they know your hand.
That's right. And
Yeah.
everything we've said here, I mean, it really boils. If you don't have cyber insurance, you really need to look into that because the services they offer, we work with a number of different carriers, but work with Tokyo Marine a lot. Like the responsiveness, as Joe mentioned, it's not what you're expecting. I mean, we're engaged very, very quickly within an hour or so of you reporting the incident. We're up and going and moving and helping you out with the communication needs. So that way you don't have to worry about, am I saying the right thing? Am I saying too much? Am I saying too little? You have the expert support there to guide you through that process. You don't have to do it on your own.
Okay. There was a question here is like, okay, calling the cyber insurance company, but They say if you have a policy through IMA, it says here that we know is underwriting by TM. Do they call their broker, their TM directly, etc.? Like, okay, yeah, who do you call? The broker or the carrier? Who do you call?
Great question. I think there are a lot of brokers want to be notified at the same time a claim is reported. So it's calling us at the same time. We have an 800 number that rings to a 24/7 claims reporting hotline. Ideally, we want to be the first point of contact, but
Hmm.
understand that simultaneous contact with an insurance broker can be helpful so that the insurance broker is aware of the incident. But those folks may not be available 24/7, like at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday evening or a Saturday morning, I guess you could say. So yeah, simultaneous reporting is helpful. Having an insurance carrier's 800 number handy to report something is also, that's primarily should be the main contact, and then notify the broker soon after. That's probably the
Okay.
best way to go.
What about the police? Should I call them? This is an attack, right? Like, should I call the FBI? Should I call the police? Is that important?
Yeah, I can.
Especially if we like impacted some like customers or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It really depends on the type of incident. So, in most instances that involve ransomware, these are known groups that the FBI has opened up investigations, and they have certain offices that lead those investigations. So, if you're dealing with a typical ransomware attack from a known threat actor that we have dealt with, we will normally recommend notifying the FBI. They often can provide some valuable intel, and but they're honestly, they're not going to come in and investigate and do the work that like a surefire would do. They're really there as a backstop and to provide some potential intel, and we share some of our findings with them to help them gather their investigative files. But really, it's kind of more of a check the box exercise. Like, you're not going to get, in most instances, some organizations are different if they have, if they have some law enforcement involvement, but most instances the FBI is not going to like jump in and help you with the incident response. That's really what the surefire team or your breach counsel are there to assist you with. But yes, we do normally recommend notifying the FBI, but that's something you can do after contacting cyber insurance and in consultation with your legal counsel as to whether it's appropriate. I would say wait until those resources are in place before making that decision.
Joe,
Okay.
Robert, I think there's a perception sometimes that if you report to the FBI, I've heard this for a lot from a lot of people who we have these proactive conversations with, that if we report to the FBI, are they going to swoop in and steal all of our servers for investigation? Are they going to take
No,
all of our equipment off site so we have to buy new servers now because the FBI took my stuff?
No,
no, yeah, that I get that question also. Like, is this going to be made public because I notify the FBI? No. The
Yeah.
answer to that is they're going to be in the background. They appreciate these notifications are voluntary. They appreciate it. They want us to share information, but they're not going to swoop in and disrupt the incident response efforts. They're not going to make anything public about your involvement in it while this incident is ongoing. So it's really there's really no downside to notifying them. It just is something you should wait and consult with legal counsel before you do it, because each incident is unique. If it's not a ransomware, you may not need to do it, and they may not provide any real meaningful help. But with a ransomware event, that I think it is a good practice to do that.
there is an
Joe.
element,
Yeah.
isn't, sorry, there is an element, isn't there, Robert? So a couple of things. One is to Robert's point, my experience with federal law enforcement or other law enforcement is a lot of times they have task forces that are targeting specific or investigating specific groups. So they're focused on gathering intel to build their case or potentially help that task force either infiltrate threat actor infrastructure or take it down the line or something like that. And in recent times, they've had a lot of really good successes. They've done a good job at that. But to Robert's point, they're not there to help the organization. As counterintuitive as that sounds, they're not there to help the organization. They're looking more at a macro picture. But Robert, on the kind of pseudo legal side, is there an element from what I know, but obviously you're the expert on this, is there an element of, let's say it's a ransomware case and it might be going to payment? Isn't the guidance like, if you do inform law enforcement, it might be seen more favorably if there are any issues down the line potentially or something like that?
Yeah, 100%. If we're ever in the position where we have a client that their data has been encrypted, They don't have good viable backups. We can't restore from any method other than potentially negotiating a payment to these criminals, which we don't like to do. That's we try to take every step to avoid making that payment. But in some instances, your business is down and out. You don't have a choice. So some instances we do facilitate a payment, and with the Surefire team would negotiate, the price and help us make sure that we're meeting all our legal obligations before we make that payment. But one of those steps is to notify the FBI, make sure they're aware that a payment is coming. So yeah, and Joe, I'm glad you brought that up. In every instance where my law firm is involved in the paying of a ransom, we always notify the FBI before that payment is made, and we will share the Bitcoin wallet with them, prior to payment if we're able.
I know we've been talking a bit about ransomware here, but I think I saw a quick pop-up for a question regarding fraud and potentially reporting fraud. Can you see that, Gabby, and maybe
Yeah,
read
yeah.
that question
What
with us?
about for major financial fraud, like $100,000 fake invoice where it has a real bank account into a real city, perhaps opened under the company's name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, again, I would defer to you on this. My experience actually in that specific arena is that the Secret Service is better equipped than the FBI to deal with that. But my advice would be do it through your counsel. Do it through the Roberts of the world.
Yeah, exactly. The Secret Service for like financial fraud, they're actually the organization that takes the lead on that. But you can notify them through the IC3 portal, or if you can reach out directly to the Secret Service, because that will get filtered to the right resources. For example, as well, Tokyo Marine, they have some contacts when their insureds, um, uh, you know, unfortunately fall for a fraudulent ACH or a fraudulent wire transfer. They have their own resources that will help you try to, freeze that fund or try to reclaim that funding. In those instances, timing is of the essence. So the sooner you notify the bank, reach out to your insurance carrier, et cetera, the better likelihood you are to at least recapture or freeze some of that funding. Because if you wait more than a few days, I mean, and it's all gone because they're moving the accounts around, they're moving the money around. But if you notify the banks involved as soon as you are aware of any indicia of fraud, you're more likely to be able to recover some of those funds.
That's a great point. I know that we're bouncing around in this discussion a little bit, but in the event that anyone ever discovers they've had some kind of misdirected funds transfer incident, whether you have sent the funds or someone has failed to send funds to you because they sent them to a fraudulent actor or a bad actor, it's helpful to start notifying everyone instead of trying to figure out who might be at fault. Notify insurance, notify your bank, start trying to figure out ways to get those funds back. Because, like Robert said, the sooner we learn about those things, the better. We found a lot of those situations. Folks don't realize or report the claim until several weeks after the event when they realize that the funds have been lost, where we might be able to help affect a positive recovery on day one, on day two, on day three, because of the various contacts in banking and law enforcement that we may be able to leverage at any given time. So great point, Robert.
I think, like you
And
said, you know,
Gabby, this is an exceedingly common type of fraud. Like we see
I-
this. This is probably the most common claim overall that we get is intercepted wire ACH transfer that is, associated with usually an email compromising situation.
yeah.
The
And I
challenge,
think it goes back to like you have to do it really soon. I think it's not notifying because it's not like a car insurance, like, okay, later we'll just call the insurance to pay. This is the sooner you do it. And like you said at the beginning, you, a claim may not be opened if it's not a good, if it's not a fit. So just always call, get the advice. That's why you're paying for the insurance. Joe, I want to something we haven't talked about because we spoke a lot about like legal communication, and I
yep,
actually love that part because it's something that most people don't really understand. They don't like
sure.
they don't see that. But on the technical side, so again, an incident happened, they bring you. What should they expect? Are you going to like fix everything? Like,
Yeah,
what's the scope? And you don't know the systems. How does it work with the internal people that are there?
sure.
How does it work with the MSP? I have like 100 questions about the relationship because this external guy comes in, doesn't know about anything. He thinks he's smarter. I know how to do it.
Sure.
There's some ego over there probably as well. especially if the IT team sort of not caused it, but it was a result of a misconfiguration they did, and now they maybe are afraid that you will uncover it. I don't know, like, yeah,
So, I mean, look, these situations always happen, but the reality is we just want to help. Like, we are not an MSSP. We're not here to take over managed service work or anything like that. Our goal is to make sure that the client is taken care of. And we'll work with internal IT teams, MSPs, in whatever capacity that causes the least friction across the
okay.
board. Now, we are clear when we do come in is that, look, use the benefit of our experience. We do hundreds of these a year. Like, just we bring a lot of up to the table in terms of just having seen a lot of things. So there are certain things that we stress upon when we first get in, things like preserving evidence. Make
Mm,
sure you don't, your natural instinct is to restore everything and rebuild everything and all that
yeah,
in a ransomware event, for example. That's not actually the right move. Let's make sure we preserve evidence and we do the restoration the right way, because we don't want to end up having the same conversation in 2 weeks because we did something the wrong
yeah,
way.
Joe, in previous calls, I've heard you say the purpose of our involvement is, and you lay out these steps. You
Yeah,
lay it out for the folks that are on the phone. Like it's a very similar
it's
thing that we say, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, you're right. Like, we're very clear. Like, these are the priorities that we're going to handle in this case: getting you up and running, figuring out what happened, supporting Robert in giving his legal advice by providing him information. How we get you up and running, it depends on the situation. We're going to have a chat with your IT team. We're going to figure out the environment very quickly. Again, we do this enough that we can kind of do the discovery phase very, very quickly. And there is a certain element of time where we get access to the environment and we go hands-on and we assess things and so on. But the point again is to be an extension of their team and to support them as needed. There are cases where the IT teams are actually really, really good and the MSPs are really, really good. In those cases, we might be more of a strategic partner helping with strategy and kind of quarterbacking than actually doing hands-on. In other cases, whether it's a small IT team, whether it's an MSP that's doesn't have the resources, we go full hands-on and we handle the restoration and the remediation. Now, you ask a question, do they expect you to do everything? Yes. And honestly, a lot of times the expectation coming in is that a lot of victims, and if I were in their shoes and having never experienced this, I'd have the same reaction. They think that it's a light switch that you flip and everything's going to come back up.
yeah,
It's not actually how it works. We have to focus on the priority systems, the priority data based on the impact, go through an order of priority, and the recovery is a phased recovery most of the time. It's not a
yeah,
switch that you go from zero to fully completely recovered.
yeah. It's not like in the movies.
It's
We
not.
close it, we move on.
Correct. You go with tier one, you get critical services up and running based on the business. Then you move on to tier two, tier three,
Yeah.
etc.
What I can say is like on the fraud side, because we deal a lot also on the training side. One thing I do suggest people will never do, don't just Google somebody that will help you, because there are so many follow-up scams where you got scammed. And I'm talking about private and business.
Sure.
So again, if you don't have the cyber insurance, or you're now emotionally sort of, distressed, and you're starting to Google, ransomware recovery, I've been hacked, what do I do? You're going to get ads of companies, lawyers,
Yeah.
services that will offer to help you. And they're going to charge you up front, and they're going to just, they're not only, they're not going to help you, obviously, they're basically stealing your money. And some of them I've seen cases where they send you like, hey, this is my document, I'm authorized, it looks real. And that's again, knowing that you have somebody to call and somebody that you pre-vetted before the incident is such a great point to be at. This is like, it puts you in a huge advantage versus going on this alone on your journey, just Googling someone. Or looking on Instagram, like, hey, Johnny had this issue, call him. This is the number. Being people trying to be helpful online. These are scammers usually. That's what I've seen.
And I see you're absolutely right. There's plenty out there. And like, in a situation like that where it's fairly chaotic on your side, like, you're not going to be able to make the best informed decisions, which is why the insurance channel is such an important channel. I do see a couple of other questions.
Yeah,
Go.
I'm reading them. So if you think your computer has been hacked, should you turn it off and then call? Same for the server
Yeah.
environment.
If you're seeing something and you have suspicions enough to think that it's been compromised, don't turn it off, pull it off the network. So either shut off the internet. So if it's a server with an internet cable, take the cable out. If it's a machine with Wi-Fi, turn the Wi-Fi off. Turning it off can uh, can destroy some evidence. It's not the end of the world if you turn it off. Like if you don't know how to turn off the internet and you have enough of a fear that something is happening, turn it off in that case. Then the evidence lost uh, isn't worth the situation spreading. That's on endpoints. That's on laptops, and servers are a little bit different. Sometimes the way that the encryption works on servers is that it actually kicks off fully or completes fully after you restart them. So turning them off actually completes the encryption. So for servers, the advice is really just take them off the internet, whether it's if they're virtual machines, the virtual NICs, or the Ethernet cable, and just call somebody afterwards.
Okay. Another one. There's a lot of questions here regarding employee training. Does it statistically make a difference? And if yes, which training matters the most? If there is data around that topic, this is that is specific enough. Thank you. Well,
Yeah,
that's too
Yeah, it's tough to
I
answer.
don't.
Yeah, the awareness, I mean, so awareness training is always helpful. It cannot hurt to, and the email training, the training employees to identify the phishing links, the phishing emails, the typical tactics of these threat actors. I know my company, we use like Know Before. There's other companies that send out the phishing training and do the sample phishing. Like, highly recommend that you do that. I don't have like hard statistics to say what it prevents, but I know it's helpful, and just the awareness. So people are aware when they're opening up an email that sounds suspicious, looks unusual, then it probably is. It's
yeah.
probably something going on. And that training is super helpful, and at least just the awareness and identifying those types of situations. I don't know that there are any stats that show exactly how it correlates to claims and whatnot, but it can't hurt.
I
I
would
agree.
add to that also that, going back to what we spoke at the beginning, we mostly think about training as, like you said, Robert, about identifying links and, like scams and all of that, which is a huge part of training. But the other part is how do you report? What do you
Yeah.
do? So all of the things that we spoke about at the beginning, communication, who do you go to? Do you follow up? If you suspected something happened to computer and you report it, do you follow up to make sure they got it? Um, um, like
So
for
yeah,
marketing, how do you like all of those things are part of training, which will make the incident way less hurtful.
I agree, but I think we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about security awareness training, but then we're talking about incident response planning and training,
Yeah,
right? On the security awareness side, I agree with Robert. It doesn't hurt. It can only help. Now, how effective it is, I think it's wholly dependent on the actual training. You've
yeah.
got some trainings that are honestly very bad. You've got others that are really great, really interactive, and then the follow-up to those. So let's say you get a report out of the first phase of training, you identify folks who have some issues. How do you tailor additional training for those folks and track it over time and all that? That's what matters in the security awareness training. The
Yeah,
second element you mentioned, Gabby, is more like who do you call and all that. In my mind, that's an IRP, an incident
yeah,
response plan and playbook.
yeah.
So that's an organizational document that lays out how do you classify incidents,
Mm-hmm.
how do you assign criticalities to incident, and what sort of work stream do you kick off for each criticality? Who do you call internally and externally? Who do you get involved from an IT point of view, legal point of view, marketing point of view, and all that? And having the document is one thing, exercising it is another, and that's where
The
tabletop exercise.
tabletop and all of those things. So
Correct.
again, there's two parts of it. There's the incident response, like you have to, do the tabletop
Yeah.
exercises and also make, do it in not do it in a in a perfect scenario. Do it in a way where maybe the person that knows the phone number isn't there. Like, You want to play, you want to do some role plays and see what happens when not everybody is answering the phone, because usually that's a reality. Not everyone answers the phone. But I think the training part that I was talking about is more on not the entire incident response plan, but on the user side, on the employee side.
Sure.
Like if you get a ticket and it says you've been hacked, don't respond to it, send
Yeah.
it to us. This is how you report phishing. This is how you report, because sometimes it gets out of control if the employees
Sure.
don't know what to do, and it just goes down.
Or
There's someone here that actually said something I think that is really important. Please remind folks, training isn't just a video. Must have learning objectives to measure retention. And as we're a security awareness provider as well. As like I always tell this to our customers, like we can have the best videos in the world. Like, and I believe we do, right? We have the best training, I'm subjective, I know that. But I tell them, as good as we are, like clicking a button, pushing training to people, and think they're going to change their behavior one day, you're fooling yourself. Changing behavior is work. It follows up with a lot of other things that I don't want to go into right now. This is a whole new webinar of how do you change behavior, how do you build culture. It has to do with, going back to communication within the organization. There's a lot of things that you make it as a benefit, not a chore for people. There's a lot of things that need to go into it. Some people are doing it just as a compliance activity. They push a button and hope for the best. Some companies are taking it to the next level, and that's where I usually see the bigger impact. So it really depends, again,
yeah.
on the company. How do they basically take that? I think, Joe, you wanted to say something.
No. Like I was actually you kind of covered a lot of what I was saying, but I did see a question in the Q&A that resonates, and it was we think of IR as very mechanical and prescribed. How do we make sure to keep people at the center during incidents, making sure breaks, sleep, emotions,
Yeah.
exhaustion are recognized? And I like honestly, that's a great question because nobody almost nobody ever talks about this.
Yeah.
And the reality is, an incident response, especially in a big incident like a ransomware event,
Yeah.
it's not a sprint. It is at the very least a half marathon, if not a full marathon. And I have seen situations where when you don't manage IT resources the right way, they burn out. And first of all, from a human element, that's
Yeah.
terrible. Second of all, from a response element, that's terrible because you lose a lot of institutional knowledge
Mm.
and ability that just goes out the window at that point. So it's incredibly important. It's honestly part of our job when we go in to do a response to kind of make sure that we go at the right tempo to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, it's going to be a tendency, Joe. Having been a former IT person, to want to be there 24 hours a day, to want to make sure that
Yeah,
you're restoring the environment, especially if something happened on your watch. Can you
yeah,
imagine? I mean, there's a
yeah.
there's a sense of ownership and a sense of fault, so we have to try to manage that as best we can with education throughout the length of an incident and ensure that those resources are appropriately applied.
And sometimes that means us saying we're going hands down tonight. We'll take care of this. You go sleep. We'll come
Yeah.
back tomorrow at this time and we'll continue this. Like sometimes we have to draw the line to make sure that that happens.
There's a nice question here. Nice. Like I think it's because so job scams is something that is out there a lot. And I know this is not a cyber incident, which is actually something we should talk about. Is this a cyber incident or not? Like that's I should have maybe started with that. What's considered an incident? Which is also should be part of the incident response plan. Like what's an incident? What's an
Sure.
event?
Yeah.
Like again, that's another webinar. But here they're saying we're seeing a lot of bad actors posting as our company and trying to solicit job applicants. We have attempted to shut it down, email address associated. What else should we be doing and try to stop this type of activity? First of all, should I even call you for that? Because we haven't been technically, it's like happening. There's attackers, maybe using our name, so our brand name is being used to solicit people, and as a result of that, people are getting hurt.
There's
So
still look, so covered. Sorry to interrupt you, Joe, but
of
let's
course,
say something like that doesn't happen on your systems, and you may not think it could be something or should be something that's considered to be covered, or it may or may not be covered. Who knows? It's still helpful to report something like that. We're happy to leverage any resources that we have available in order to assist entities that are going through whatever it is that they might be going through, whether it's somebody impersonating your domain and helping getting that taken down, or trying to find the right resources to deal with another, these job impersonation schemes. So it still can be, even though you might not have a claim, we still have the opportunity to provide you with resources and assistance based on our experience, because it's likely, if you're seeing it, that we have seen it multiple times. Joe, you probably had some comments too.
Oh, like that, you covered what I was going to say, like, especially about the domain takedowns and so on. That's about as much as you can do here, but there are resources that you can leverage.
Yeah. So after responding to the claims, you investigate. Sometimes there is a ransomware negotiations. I've actually seen contracts made with ransomware groups where
I've
you,
seen that
you
happen
sign a
once, and it
contract
made me
with them that
laugh.
they won't. But okay, so that's again another topic. But what do you see usually is the main reason? How do they get in usually? Like, what was it like in the movies? They did something, or was it something stupid?
No,
Like,
it's
what do you
it's a
see
lot more.
mostly when they share with you how they got in? What was it?
So when they share with us, we take it not with a grain of salt, but with a whole bag of salt, because most of
Okay,
the time when they share how they got in, it's so generic and frankly untrue. They at
okay,
that point they have no real incentive to give you anything after you've paid them beyond what they've
okay.
already given you. But what we do know from the forensics is a lot of times we get a sense of how they got in, and the reality is it's a lot more mundane than that. It's nowhere like the movies where they're doing crazy things. Most of the time, honestly, it's a VPN that doesn't have MFA, and the threat actor gets through that either through brute forcing, or they have credentials already, or in certain cases, the MFA, the VPN appliance has a certain vulnerability that they can exploit and get in.
Gotcha.
That's by far the biggest root point of compromise that we see. That's about 60% of what we see, if I'm not mistaken. The
And
rest is
so I would say,
distributed.
yeah, it's these are normally crimes of opportunity. Joe, would
Yeah,
you agree
yeah,
more than, I mean, some of them are targeted, but a lot of times these are crimes of opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. They're scanning the internet. They're seeing what doesn't have MFA. They're trying to get in that way. Other
And
times,
that's so important for people to understand because I talk to customers and they're saying, hey, we're too small, we're not a target. And I'm like, guys, you don't understand how this works. You
no,
are
and
a
they
lead.
don't know
They
who
are
they are.
scanning, they're blasting. If you sort of hit that scam, now they have something to work with and they will try to they will find something valuable that you have, whether you are a gateway to others, whether you have money, whether you have reputation, like something. They will find something. So no one is too small.
Yeah,
That's
we
They
for
don't
sure.
even
find
know who you are at that point for the most part. They're just
Yeah.
seeing, is there a door open and I get in, and then I figure out who it is.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
targeting technology at scale is how I've been putting it. It seems that way for the past several years now.
Which I think is sort of nicely leads to the next question. How about the new upcoming threats with AI? Because if we talked about scale, now we talked about scale and personalization. So now, if it used to be like generic phishing, now it's spear phishing at scale. Either AI usage or phishing or AI injections and leakage and property data, proprietary data. Yeah. So first of all, there's a lot of hype around that. But on the other hand, you said eventually it's a VPN. So first of all, is the hype correct? Like from what you're seeing, not from research and the risk, like in reality, how many of the attacks that are successful have been, leveraging AI?
it's hard to say because ultimately you don't really have proof in most cases. I think where AI is being used in this is a couple of areas. One is the phishing emails, like you mentioned. So the quality of the phishing emails has substantially increased to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it's hard for the average individual to know whether it's a phishing email or not. Beyond that, I think their ability to kind of opportunistically scan the internet and try to find doors, I think some groups are using AI to do that. Like they're
Okay.
leveraging almost AI pen testing tools in a way to try to
Yeah.
find the door and get in. Um, In
What
terms,
about deep fakes, voice cloning?
it happens, but it's rarer than the alternative. Like it happens. There's documented cases of it happening, but are they the majority of the cases that we see from an impersonation or phishing point of view? No,
No.
they're
So it's
still
still not there. Like the risk is high, but it's still the phishing. It's just the phishing
correct.
got better. So if it was generic
Correct.
phishing, now it's spear phishing. Finding you and collecting information about you. If it used to
Correct.
be manual, now it's automated. But eventually, you experiencing the same type of attack, not necessarily a deep fake FaceTime or Zoom, which
It
looks
happens. It's not
That
the norm, I would say at this point.
Yeah, that happens, especially when they're trying to like get in W-2 information, things of that. We've seen a few of those where there's but the deep fake, I think that's coming, but it's not the reality of what we're seeing as far as the majority of the claims, or even it's
Yeah.
just it's mostly in the phishing arena, whereas Joe said a vast improvement on the language of phishing emails is the biggest threat.
Mm,
gotcha.
they're definitely using it in negotiations.
Oh yes.
You could tell that they're using AI in negotiations. So,
You
and
see
they're
the long
using,
dashes in the emails that they
and recently we've gotten the sense that they're using AI to actually review data they're stolen to kind of come up with
makes sense.
negotiation points, so financial data, stuff like that.
Yeah, so they got a lot of data. They use AI to how much money can I get from this company?
Correct. And
How
how do I
what's their
leverage
because I
that?
don't want to open the documents and look for the insurance policy. I will just use LLM to
Correct.
basically. So they're working like startups. Basically, they're just like crime groups, but they're using marketing tactics. They're sending emails with offers that are just better than what real companies can send because they were not going to deliver on that. They're going to use AI to, find the information about you, target you better. Sometimes I would say like they can do a better job than a lot of marketing teams because they're specialized in targeted campaigns. If they only use
Yeah.
that skills for the good.
And they're innovative and they have zero constraints, whether
Yeah,
ethical, moral, or legal, right? So,
yeah. Like, unfortunately, I'm seeing more and more. Like, we talk about voice cloning, but I do see people like grandparents and others that are getting, calls from their grandkids. Hey, grandma, I got kidnapped. I'm in jail, stuff like that. So that I did see more like voice cloning and just threatening parents that their kids that are now abroad, hiking somewhere, they got hurt and now they need to transfer money. Um, So seeing more of that. Um,
and I think what we're suffering from right now is a lack of imagination. Like I'm sure other stuff from AI will come out. It's just generally, I think we lack the imagination to kind of predict that to a good degree.
That's why I think awareness is important because, again, it will not maybe change behavior, but it will help you with this imagination because the more you sort of learn about those things. So one of the things that, I like about Wizer, again, I'm subjective, beyond the annual training that we're doing, every month we take a real case. We use actors to basically tell the story of how it unfolded. And you can see that, because sometimes you ask people like, you know, how did you believe that? But when you hear the story, it makes sense, like you can see that it's really about, and again, going to this AI, when you collect information about a person, you can make it seem so, so real. And I actually had a friend. She's a fraud fighter. She actually deals with fraud. She was at an airport with her kids at like midnight, and her flight was canceled, and she was emotional about it. And she basically on Facebook, complained about it, and she needed a flight, and the airline contacted her back on Facebook trying to help, and she was like happy because they're going to give her a flight back. It's midnight. They were trying to scam her. So they're like
Mhm.
scammers out there looking for people that are renting online, you know, trying to offer them help. And by the way, a lot of those personal incidents turn to eventually hacks on the company because if you hack a person, you're gonna, like you said, you don't know where you got, and you're looking for opportunities, and now you see, hey, okay, that person works there. Maybe we can from that, personal account,
Sure.
hack the company. So that helps. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. We had a lot of questions here. And yeah, any like closing thoughts and also how do people contact you? Like either on LinkedIn or email. Again, each one, whatever you feel sharing. But yeah, closing thoughts and how to contact you if somebody wants more information.
I'll start just because I saw a couple of questions related to Tokyo Marine policyholders and accessing resources. To get the best, at least initial starters for support, you can email cybernet@tmhcc.com. That's a great start for these kinds of things, questions about Wizer, questions about arbitration.
Cool. Robert?
Yeah, I can put my email in the chat or whatever. You can look us up. We have we have our own hotline, own breach response email. So if you're dealing with an urgent issue, you don't happen to have insurance or something, you can reach out to us that way. I do strongly encourage the procurement of cyber insurance because for all the reasons that we've discussed today, it's super helpful and something that every business should have at this stage with the current climate we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, same from our side. I mean, we have a response mailbox, response@surefirecyber.com. If ever you need anything, or I'm on LinkedIn, so happy to have any conversations there as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn's also a great place to look up folks, especially you can sort of put the name to the face, make sure you get the right person, all that sort of thing.
And as you can see, guys, these guys are friendly. So if you are like in an incident, you want friendly people talking to you, I'm sure you guys are, you know how to handle high emotions. And this is something that is really important in this type of situations. And I just can't imagine companies going through this without cyber insurance, to be honest. Like if you don't have that, and forget about the money, just who do I talk to? Who, how do I find a lawyer that understands about this? How do I find an incident response team? Like, and I'm not even talking about paying them. I'm just talking about like finding the right people during an event. That's the last thing that you want to do. You don't want to be educating yourself during an event, finding the right people, verifying them. This is like if this just adds so much stress on top of existing stress that you're probably in. So, and it doesn't cost a lot to be honest, but that's another topic. I think it's totally worth it, in my opinion. It doesn't, as you can see, we didn't talk about stopping from attacks from happening in the first place. That's another topic. How do you prevent attacks? But it's a toolkit that you need to have, in my opinion, in case something goes wrong. It just reduces the amount of stress significantly.